extra pointed out, depending on how far we're coming with the 35 minutes left for this talk. So what is AI and who am I? Yeah, let's start shortly. Who am I? If I lose time at the very end, at least you have this slide on the recording, so you can contact me if you need anything about this topic. Yeah, will not talk about me here. I will talk about the product and artificial intelligence. So that this is the title AI, artificial intelligence. There's a broad definition, or there's like academic definitions. I use a very broad definition here. So everything which is automatical or which is indeed machine learning, I will cover here. So I for some of the features, I don't really know if this is AI or machine learning, or if it's just a couple of if then else statements in the product, but they are smart. They're helping me in either creating a report or finding things in the report or making easier useful for the report users. So we will talk about, or I will talk about things which you can do in the GUI, the graphical user interface, by just clicking around. And if time permits, we will also talk, see a little bit of scripts, what you can do like in DAX, which is very unusual to machine learning here, but still there's algorithms available there, or in M, or in R, or in Python. So let's see how far we're coming. The features I identify the smart features are the following. So in Power BI Desktop, we have this Q&A, the question answer feature, where you can just type in a question and then the tool will present you an answer for that. We have smart narratives, where you can get a summary in plain English about what's happening in the organization. There's this insights feature where you can ask for certain data points. Please explain me why this point is like higher than the previous one or lower than the previous one. We have analytic lines where you can have trend lines and so on. I most probably will have time to show that. Most probably I will cut out here the key influencer visual and the decomposition tree. Also column by example and web by example will most probably not have time. Even if this would have been a 60 minutes time, I would not find time for that. Maybe we'll also find time for some smart custom visuals. So instead of just using the built-in standard visuals, you can use custom visuals. And some of them are smart that they are like implementing or have implemented, for example, machine learning algorithm in R. And then we can use this without even know what R is, without even knowing how this works. You have just a couple of parameters which you can set and then use this script. This is like in between. It's more advanced than just using the built-in features from Power BI, but it's still easy to use because you don't have to learn R or Python for that. Then we have this automated ML with AI insights. If you possess a premium, either capacity or premium per user license, you can use the AI insights features, and you can also use Azure machine learning services and incorporate them into Power BI. And then there's this individual ML, machine learning, where you can use either cognitive services or again, Azure machine learning, where you come up with your own definition of a like a Python script where you implement the machine learning scripts as opposed to using the built-in algorithms available also in Azure machine learning. Yeah, then in DAX, you can use a regression line, for example, of an algorithm and an example for that. Most probably we'll have time to see that, or the what if parameters. And of course, there's this R and Python script visual, where you run a script as part of your visual. So all the data you have in your data model is then injected or exposed to the R or Python script in the visual, and this script is then coming up with the visualization, which you then present. Or you can also integrate R and Python code during your ETL. That means in Power Query. So in Power Query, you have the script source task and the script, what's called transformation task. So where you get like pre-prepared things, expose this to an R script, and then the R script again returns the result. So lots of talking. The rest of this talk, I will be in demo mode. So I will show you for the next 30 minutes, I will show you those features. And if there's any questions, I'm not sure how I can recognize that there are questions, but if there are and you have a chance to ask something, then please do so. And at the very end, I will just run through the rest of the slides, which is just a summary for each of the features. It is more meant for you as yeah, that you can then read about the features, and there's also a link to the documentation there. So let's jump to the demo. Make something useful out of this 30 minutes I got. So this is Power BI Desktop, as already explained. This is totally for free. I already loaded some data here, so I have something to to show you. So this talk is not about how I loaded the data, but this is basically AdventureWorks. I used AdventureWorks for that. And the most liked feature by myself is this Q&A feature. So I can just double click on the pane, and then this bubble comes up with ask a question about your data. So I have this entry field here, and it's even suggesting different questions I could ask. So I could ask top product categories per total product cost, or top sales order numbers per total product cost. Those questions, I did not invent them, but Power BI Q&A automatically discovered interesting things, and I could just click on one of these questions and then get the result. Or okay, Markus, can you please turn off your microphone? I will mute you. So thank you very much. So you can ask a question about your data. That means that I can just, for example, type in sales amount, and if it's recognizing what I'm talking about, then usually I get this blue line around, and then I see like this is 80 million of sales amount. And you can also ask, for example, by category, because I have a product category in there. So if you're good in typing and if you already know your data model, so the data model is using terms you're familiar with, then this would be a good option, like having just typing in those things, because then I can create visuals with that. And if I keep this bubble, I can just change the text in there, or I can just transform this to any custom visual. So now there's no difference between a visual I would have created in the standard way or with this Q&A visual. So this is really a really smart feature if you ask me. I can also ask for, again, the sales amount. Let's keep it simple here. By promotion, and then will show me the different promotions. I can also ask for example, only for 2013. So this tool is smart enough to discover that 2013 is not the name of a column or a table in my data model, but 2013 is the content of my date table, and I can then filter there. So if we, for example, then convert this, we can even prove that now a filter was added for year is in 2013. So you can really communicate with that. Or if you ask for sales amount by territory group here, this territory group is marked in the model as a geographical information, then Power BI will then not come up with a bar chart, which is, I think, is smart, because if you just ask for a number, right, sales amount was just presenting the number. As soon as I ask for buy something, it will come up with a bar chart, which is best practice for categorical data. For geographic data, we could discuss about, do we want to have this as a map? I personally am not a huge fan of maps, especially if it's easy stuff like that, for several reasons. One is there's data exposed to Microsoft Bing. There's good documentation out there what is exposed to Bing, but still, you have to communicate with the internet to make this map visual for you, and you also have to be connected to the internet. So if this is like closed down in the port, so there's a firewall and the ports are not allowed, you will not be able to see this map. The second thing is that you're really dependent if you just use the name, like the territory group, as we will see, contains like North America or Pacific and so on and so forth, and then you're totally dependent on what Bing service believes that you're talking about. And the Pacific, of course, the Pacific Ocean is like right there, as we can see here. But of course, the Pacific Ocean would be Australia, Japan, Indonesia, and so on. This would be the Pacific region. But it's pointing out the point here. And we also have an issue with that one, with NA, which is not available. So we have some sales where we don't know where the sales happened, and then it points out to Nairobi, which does not really make sense here. So if you want to use that, please make sure that you know latitude and longitude positions, which you then point on the map to be sure that you point out the right things. And the other thing is that most people I work with, they are aware of where North America, what the Pacific region is, so we don't have to really draw this on a map, because the information density on a map is not very high, right? Because we have a lot of space used up and only see like some points here. So I'm showing to you this, that I also can show. I want to see this as a bar chart, and then we can also change So we have different commands available in this. There's a good documentation out there. We can also, for example, can demonstrate that you can do easy calculations. We can just multiply the sales amount by 2 if you want to fake your data and pretend that the sales is double as high. Fortunately enough, it's also then showing a sales amount times 2. And this is only possible for really simple things, so I don't think this will replace DAX in anytime soon. And the last one is if we, for example, have the sales amount and ask by date, then again, the tool is smart enough to know, date, this is continuous data. And for continuous data, it makes sense to draw something on a line chart. So what we get here is a line chart. So I really like this feature. When I first saw the feature, I thought, yeah, this is cool to demonstrate and convince people that Power BI is really cool. But I discovered that I use this feature a lot as long as I know the variables and the columns I'm looking for in the data model. It's, at least for me, it's faster to just double click and start typing and asking for things instead of scrolling up and down and looking for individual fields in the field list. So if again, maybe this is a little bit weird of a data model, so I want to make sure that I get the right things and select the sales amount and the date directly from here and change this then to a line chart. So I can also demonstrate, of course, this is still possible if you even if you use the Q&A. And there's some things I want to point out here. So one thing is that for this line chart, we have the possibility that like we have really volatile data, right? The numbers are going up and down. This is probably this is AdventureWorks. This is fake data. This is demo data. But still, we can see like the highest point, the peak of sales was in January 2013 with over 4.2 million. And I can right click and ask for analyze and please explain me the increase. This is a cool feature. So when I do that, or we will see this. Yeah, I already did this just before the demo to make sure that everything works. But if you do this the very first time, you see this light bulb for a certain amount of time. And this always means that now Power BI is coming up with an ad hoc machine learning model. So it's trying to analyze, are there relationships? Are there any statistically important things? And it's showing only things which are statistically significant. And as we can see here, what it came up with is one thing is like by date and gender. So it's showing me that obviously this analysis of the increase, so we have a almost 60% increase in sales amount between December and January, and it came up with 10 explanations, or was it 8? I can't remember. Yeah. So and it only finds things which are statistically significant. So it's ask or showing me that there's like sales amount by date and gender. It found something interesting because we had this increase from 2.6 to 4.2 million, which is a almost 60% increase. And a big portion of that increase goes to M. M is the gender, so it's the male employees, the male sales employees. So most of the increase was due to a better or a high increase of sales, most probably, yeah, especially from our male employees. And of course, maybe you think, wait a moment, if we have more male sales employees, of course, if the total increase, of course, also the total of the male employees will increase. But the interesting part is, if it's coming up with some suggestion, there is something which is statistically relevant. Of course, there's always the chance that it is statistically relevant, but it's not practically relevant. So always use your own brain and your insight. But when we, for example, change this, we can then change the visualization of that. I never found out how I can use this sort of visualization here, but this one is interesting. So if you point out this is a 100% bar chart, then we see that the relationship in December was like that more than half of the sales was accountable by the female employees. So 52.4% of the sales were by females, and this shifted towards to only 42 for the females, and so now the male employees have the majority of sales there. So this might be interesting. And if you like this, you can then send a thumbs up or a thumbs down to the product team. I think this is not changing anything in the behavior of Power BI, but this is giving feedback to the product team that this feature found something useful for you. And you can also click on this plus icon. And if I click here, then I can convert this insight in the actual visual on my screen in my report. So I can now share it with my colleagues. So I don't have to replicate this thing. This also proves, even if there's like percentages, we don't need pie charts for that, right? So we can see that there's like a majority of the 50% majority was now in the green section, now it's in the blue section, and we see this is like the colors, the females are the green, and as I'm more traditionally, I tend to change the colors here and change it to not the data labels, but of course the columns. I'd color the females red to have more traditional colors. And then we can also add a constant line here. So I can add a line here pointing out 0.5, which then makes it very apparent that like the 50% is right here and that we had change in majorities. So we can like find something, add it in the report, and then still can share it because this is not a custom visual. This is a standard visual which we can do anything to it what we need or want. So this is really cool. I first demonstrated this Q&A where we ask questions, but there's also this smart narrative. So if you jump back here on the smart narrative, this is this one. What it's now doing, again, it takes a couple of seconds when you start this because it's now analyzing the data we see on the current screen. And then it's transferring this information into plain English. It's only available in English. It's not depending on the language you're using in your operating system or in Power BI. And then it's summing up things. So sales amount trended up, resulting in a 122% increase between January 1st, 2011, which is like this point, and Friday, November 1st, 2013. This should be somewhere here. So can you please go back, go away? So here, so November, this like here. So the whole period, it shows this was this increase. And the sales amount started trending up on this for 4 months and so on. Everything which is underlined in green here is not hard-coded text, but this is uh, yeah, this is calculated from the data. So if I put in something, for example, what could we do here? So if I add a category of my product categories and put here a slicer for that, we can see that if I change the selections and the filters in my slicers, so for example, only for the bikes, then the numbers down here will change. So we'll recalculate because it's adapting to what we currently see. So this is a really, really powerful feature. And what's also really powerful with that is that you can live, of course, with the text it just show you, but you can also change this text. So I can add a text here and asking for, I want to add something. So how do we add something here? Here's the value. And then I want, for example, sales amount for bikes in 2013. Let's see if this works. 2013, that should help. And then I can save this. Yeah, save. And then I can add a text here to like add what I'm doing here and say sales amount for bikes in 2013 were so and so. So you can add things and change things, and when you add a value, this is similar to what we have in this Q&A visual, where you can just ask questions and then it will come up with answers for that. So really powerful thing. Let's work a little bit more on the line charts. Okay. Try to have one eye on the watch, so I'm knowing how far we're going. So if you look at this data, again, this is really volatile. But I have the gut feeling that, especially if you look at the first point and the last point, that like, there's an upward trend. Even it's like going up and down, but there should be an upward trend if in my gut feeling. And we can prove that. So in this analytics line, which we have previously seen with this constant line. So as you can see here, this analytics pane, this changes according to what kind of visual and what kind of data is available. So for line chart, we have most of those features available. So we could have a max and a min line, the average line, and so on. And you can also just turn on a trend line. So if you do that, we get this trend line. Yeah, telling us, yes, there is an upward trend. My gut feeling was not bad, but was right. And we can see that here. We can also add a forecast here. Forecast means that we put something into the future. And what you can change, and yeah, I want also to talk about this trend line. The trend line, what you can change here is only like the colors. You cannot change the algorithm. So I know, because I recalculated the numbers, I know this is simple regression line. Um, if this works for you, perfectly. If it doesn't work for you, we will find another solution. Hopefully, we have some time to talk about those other solutions. And similar is for the forecast. So there's tons of algorithms out there where you can do time series forecast. Power BI or the product team implemented one of those algorithms. We cannot influence or we cannot change the algorithm. We can only set certain parameters. So we can ask, for example, the units are points. We could also ask, I know this is indeed this is monthly data, so we can change this here. Or I can cut down the forecast, because I don't believe it makes sense to put a forecast for almost a year with the data available. So maybe we restrict this to 6 months. We could also ignore some of the last data points if I think this is not complete data, for example, and we can also tell the algorithm this is seasonality out there for 12 months. And the gray area here, this is the confidence interval. The higher the numbers, the broader this gray ribbon will be, because that means basically, um, of course, this is a point, and of course, we know that the true value in the future will not be exactly on this point. But with a confidence of 95%, we believe that this value is between 1.2 and 5.5 million. And of course, a forecast with that ribbon, with that bread upper and lower bound does not really make sense, but this is due to the volatility of this data. If we have more stable data, of course, this will be much, much stabler also more for the forecast. Then I can click on this apply button, and then we can see what's happening there. So now reducing the numbers, and the rest looks the same. If you take a closer look, I mean, I can easily discover this. This is like an M-shaped pattern. My first name is Markus, so I easily discover M letters in things. And as you can see here, this M letter is also tucking up here, and we can also see this M letter here. The shape's a little bit different, but like the common thing between those two is then shown here. And this M letter is on a higher level than this or this level because we have this upward trend. So this forecasting is just tear it down to what it is. It looks up for trends to it, so it knows if like the future values are higher or lower, and it tries to find patterns in the past. And for these patterns, and also for the trend line, we have different algorithms available. Currently here in this feature, we can only choose one, and that's it. For the smart custom visuals and other things, of course, we can totally influence that. If we make a copy of this page, let me think. Yeah, then we can also, like for the trend line, let's remove the forecast here. Let's stick with this trend line. So I also came up with a trend line on my own, or to be honest, I did not invent this on my own. I took this from somebody else. I will talk about this in a second. So here for the simple regression line, we can also add this one. And as you can see here, now this simple regression line I put there is at the same level as this built-in thing. So this proves that the algorithm built into the product is a simple regression line. How did I do that? So there's this smart guy called Daniel Masluk, and he came up with an algorithm in DAX to actually implement this algorithm. So why would I do that? Of course, DAX is not a really machine learning language, right? It's really awkward to do things like that because there's like R or Python, it's much easier there. But maybe you don't want or can use R and Python, then this could be a solution. And basically what this simple regression line does, this is the formula. Maybe you can remember it. Yeah, here's the formula. Here it is. So simple regression line, there's an intercept. That's the point where the line crosses the y-axis. And then it multiplies whatever points we have on the x-axis. In my case, it's the date, multiplied by the slope. So if you have a positive slope, then we have an upward trend. If you have a downward trend, then the slope would be negative. So that's the basic thing. And as you can see, if you're used to DAX, then you see this from the coloring, the intercept is a variable, which is defined up there. So there's a variable called intercept, and the intercept is then calculated as the average of y minus the slope times the average of x. And what's then, for example, the slope? The slope is the division of this term divided by this term. So we can like use variables to make also this sort of readable. Of course, if you don't like mathematics, this will scare you away, hopefully not. And this is then calculated step by step, as we can see here. And what's the actual value? The actual value is what we currently see on the screen, which is like the on the x-axis, I want to have the date, and the y values are my sales amount. That's what I use down in these variables. So for example, now we have this formula. Now we can influence things. That's the idea of having a formula, so we can change things in our script. And for example, we could limit what we see. So it's a while that I did this. I think I just change it like here. So I'm asking now, return not all the values, but only return the trend line for dates later or including or later than 1st of January of 2013. So let's see if I'm doing this right here. If we then let it work and then close this, then we should see that now this is starting only in 1st of January. So now we can change things here. We can also change, for example, the data we're using for that, because currently in this formula, the whole 2 years are used. So, but maybe I think that doesn't make sense to like have a trend line depending on the last year and the previous year. I want this more current. So I also changed the filter in here and add a filter here instead of the all selected, not all the dates, but now I select only the dates available in my by the other filters and limit this again to first starting at January 2013. So again, if I change this, and this opens up possibilities. Now we can change things. Unfortunately, what we will see here, that we have a downwards trend. So within the year of 2013, there's a downwards trend to the data we have available. But yeah, don't blame the messenger, right? So this is what we can do here with even with DAX. So you can do magic here, and I've got 9 minutes left. So let me think what I will show you instead. So maybe not instead, but for the rest of the time. What we also can do, maybe let's do this for the forecast. I think if the forecast, is this the R forecast? Yeah, we have the forecast in here. So for example, this forecast. Now this is the standard visual. So my header, this is not meant to be a productive system. This is of course to be meant educationally. That's why I named this standard visual and R visual. In a real report, they would not name things like that. So what we currently see, this is what we did with the forecast. The same forecast I just demonstrated a couple of minutes ago. And I have then the same idea implemented in R or in Python. And this is an R visual, an R script visual. That means if I click on that, we get in the lower section, we get the section where we can pass in an R script. And the first section here, which I mark here, this is always the same. If you open a script visual, then it tells you that the following code to create a data frame and remove duplicated rows is always executed and acts as a preamble for your script. So it's like executing a data set. It's creating a data set. There's a variable called data set, and then with this left assignment, it moves things from here to here. So it's creating a data frame depending on the date and the sales amount. Why the date and the sales amount? Because that's what I'm making available to the script here. So I use Power BI to prepare all my things. I create a model, and then I use the RScript visual and expose different things from my data model. And that's the data, the sales amount. That's what it's telling me here. It's also removing any duplicates. I don't really believe it's executing this statement, but this is the standard behavior of Power BI, right? If you have like you have a list of products or a list of dates, and only for the dates where something available, you see numbers. That's the first thing. And also, it's always aggregating on the dates or the category. So it does never a date appearing 2 times. Even if you have two sales in a sales table, it's always aggregating things. But this is just a reminder. And then, as the portion of the script I came up with. So I used this ARIMA algorithm. I always forget what it is. I think it's called average rolling moving average. Yeah. Yeah, I always forget the definition for that. And then with R, what's really cool with R is, first, R is open source, so you can download this and install it on your computer for free. And the community is really, really, really active. So last time I looked up the available libraries on the CRAN, the Comprehensive R Archive Network, I think it was over 13,000 packages. So maybe it's over 15 or 16,000 right now. I don't remember. So this is really overwhelming. So one package means this can be just one single function algorithm, but most probably they contain a lot of the tons of functions, tons of samples, tons of algorithms, and also the academics work with that. So if some of the universities came up with a new, cool new way of doing forecast, for example, or neural network, or decision tree, or whatever, then there's a high probability that there will be a package available on R. So you and I can use that. Even I'm not a data scientist. I did not study statistics. Um I'm I studied business education. Yeah. So I have a little bit of idea of what's happening there. And that's a disadvantage. Some of the packages really silly and funny names, not telling you really what it is. So Zoo is one of the ways to do the forecast. I think I use it for the forecast. There's also this forecast. This makes it easy. dplyr I use for managing the data. ggplot then I use for actually draw what we see here. And the scales makes it possible to see the real numbers here, because this comes from statistics. So in R, the standard way of showing numbers is not 6 million as 6 and 6 zeros, but 6 million in the scientific way would be 6E06. So that's a scientific notation. The scales package allows me to get these numbers as my business users would expect them. So load the packages. Then the second thing is I prepare dataset. So preparing, usually I do not very much here in R because I use Power Query. I use my data source. Maybe I have a data warehouse, would prepare all the data there, of course. But in this case, I convert the date column into this POSIX format. So POSIX format is one of the Unix date formats. And I found out it's easier for me to draw, and the packages and ggplot can easier handle it if I convert it. If you don't convert it, still works. But we get this nice summarization that we don't see every single day. So the ggplot now is aware of that is a date, and there's a hierarchy between year and month and date, and this is easy for the package discovering with the POSIX format. And the other one is that I filter out things here. So this, the time, not filter out, I'm creating a time series and telling the package that I have the sales amount column. There's a blank in there. I have to use this weird notation. So date is just referred here. Sales amount is referred in this way because I have this blank in there. And I tell it that everything starts in the first month of 2011 and that I have a frequency like for the seasonality of 12. Then I'm creating a model with the ARIMA function. The ARIMA function is from the forecast package. And I think for the zoo package, I use this TS function, if I remember correctly. So I pass in this TS. I pass in parameters for the season and for the order. This is something you can play around to find out better or worse ways. So you can look up, this is very well documented. This is a very widespread algorithm. I then do the prediction, so use the predict function, passing in my model and passing in the parameter to ask for please do it for the next 6 months in this case. And then I build a data frame where I then pass in my date, my existing sales amount, and also the prediction. So now returning 3 values. I have a date, a sales amount, and a prediction, which I then pass into the ggplot package. I ask for please put the date on the x-axis, put the sales amount on the y-axis, use the third color in the current color schema, which is obviously green. And then I again, so gm line and point means draw lines and put points there, and also add another line and point in a different color, but this time don't show the sales amount, but the sales amount prediction, which I just got from the previous thing. So I'm now running not only the transformation and machine learning forecast, but also the drawing of the data in here. And this is what we then get as a result. So if I close this again, we see this as a result. And you can also do this very same thing in Python. You can also run, and I see I'm running out of time, so I have to stop here. You could also run this script instead of in the visual. You could also run it in Power Query. Just jump over a second so I can show you. For example, for the R integration, I have this time series. The ARIMA algorithm is also running in here. So I have a run R script step in here. And if you take a look on the script, on this, where is it? Run the R script. I thought we should see it here. Here we can see it. So I have the same script running here. So preparing the data set, calling again the TS, calling the ARIMA, doing the prediction, and then returning. I'm not ggplotting something. I just return the data, and then the script is not always running for every single visual, but only once when I load the data from the previous system. So with that said, and 1 minute left, I will jump back to my slides. Scroll through the slides to just show you. I will share this with the organizers. So There's a lot of information out there. Yeah, that's not so interesting. Uh, okay. This is another. And then I for all of them I showed, and also for those I did not show you, there's like a short description of what this feature is about, and a link to the documentation of um, Microsoft. And with that said, I'm ready, just in time. I would say 1 minute left. Now exactly 5 o'clock on my 3 o'clock in my time, so 7 o'clock on your time. And with that, back to the studio.
Thank you, Markus. I'm extremely sorry for some system problem.
No worries.
Hope we will arrange another session. It will cover the rest of the things that you couldn't cover current session.
Anytime.
There are a few questions coming in from the audience.
Mhm.
I have put down it into the chat window. First question is, how can we use sales forecasting algorithm in Power BI like random forecast regression? And the
Yeah.
second question is, which machine learning models is used in Power BI?
Mhm. So for the random forest regression, there's nothing built into the product. So if you want to use that, use R or use Python, and either as a script or in Power Query, or if you possess a data warehouse on SQL Server technology, so Azure SQL Server or Azure SQL Database or SQL Server, you can also run external scripts, which then can again run R, Python, or even Java. And then you could use packages, for example, in R or in Python, find out about the packages where you can do the random forest regression, and then just build it into your data model, and then you persist the data into your tables, and then everybody can just use it. So the end users do not have to play around with the R script visuals. So that would be the answer for the first question. So I hope this answers your question. Please let me know. And the other one, which machine learning model is used in Power BI? There is no one machine learning model, but there's different features, as you have seen with the Q&A ratio. I'm not sure if this is machine learning. For the narrative, smart narrative, I believe this is machine learning. So it's analyzing the what we're seeing on the screen. For the insight features, this is machine learning. It finds out correlations in your data model and then comes up with that. What kind of specific algorithm it is, this is not documented. So Microsoft doesn't really announce what kind of specific algorithm they're using. If this is one of the standard algorithms available in packages in R, for example, or if this is something they tweaked and came up with on their own, I don't know. There's no, as far as I know, there's no documentation about that.
Thank you, Marcus. Thank you very much. Hope we will arrange another session in coming
Sure.
days, and it is a very much interesting things. And it's this if we uh, AI in AI can be implemented by individual by himself. Then it will be empowered the not only the experts but also the business people, I think.
Mhm.
Oh, Marcus, thank you very much for today's session, and it's a fantastic session. And I think oh, we have another question that
Mhm.
someone asked that if we want to learn more about the AI in Power BI, what will be your suggestion, or is there any materials that you
Yeah,
suggested?
of course. I mean, there's a book from me, Self-Service AI with Power BI Desktop. Um, I believe there's also another book now, or a second or third, but this is from 2020, and it's still most probably up to date. So the smart narrative is not there, but everything I did show you today, except of the smart narrative, and lots of other features like a lot of scripts, a lot of smart custom visuals is available in this book. Um, Other than that, of course, there's documentation out there, and I recorded for the Data Platform Summit. I recorded a 8 hour pre-con seminar on that. So check out the Data Platform Summit page. Um, how you can get access to this workshop there. Of course, book me. Yeah, I will be happy to help you. Yeah,
Thank you very much, Marcus.
yeah, sure. You're welcome.
Thank you for yeah, accepting the invitation, and thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Enjoy the rest of this conference. Yeah.
Okay. Everyone, thank you very much for the session, and hope for your patience for keeping with us in the session. And we are moving towards the next session, and that session was by Timanta. He's joining from Canada, and I will requesting the Timanta to start his session. Timanta, are you there? Thank you,
Hi,
Timanta.
Sam. How are you doing?
I'm fine. And what about you?
Same here, Sam. So firstly, I would like to apologize uh, for the previous time we planned to speak. Uh, I slept that day around at 3 a.m. As I remember, and I forgot to set up the alarm, and I overslept as a result. So I think the session was at around 6 a.m. from Eastern time. So I absolutely overslept. So entirely my fault. So very sorry for any inconvenience caused on that regard. But today we'll be doing that session. And yeah, let's see how it goes. We're speaking after a while here at the Tech Forum community. So excited as usual. So let's see how it goes.
What is the local time there now?
Right now it's 9 a.m.